どうもありがとうございます。隣国のおじさんです。日本人のおじさんですけど、アメリカの人権委員会でですね、タラ・オー博士というね、韓国系アメリカ人のですね、方の、スピーチがあったんですけれども、この方はもともと北朝鮮のね、人権の専門家なんですけど、今や韓国が自由国家ではなくなりつつあるということで、ピンチだっていうことでスピーチをしておられるんですけど、小学校4年生までは韓国に住んでおられたのかな。その後アメリカに移民してね、アメリカ軍におられたみたいですけど、もともとこの方はね、こういうことを言う方なんですけど、重要なのは、この方が何を語ったかっていうことよりもね、アメリカの下院議員たちが韓国の問題に注目し始めたっていうことですよね。
I focus on the Korean Peninsula. In my earlier years, I focused on North Korea, but lately I focus on South Korea. This place of freedom, however, is losing its freedom. There are more and more restrictions on freedom in the Republic of Korea. Restrictions on freedom of speech and freedom of religion and other freedoms. Increasingly, the measures to suppress freedom are being codified into law. And now they're trying to change the constitution. And who are these people who are so focused on eroding freedom in South Korea? They are pro-Chinese Communist Party, pro-CCP, pro-Korean Workers' Party, which is a communist party in North Korea. And they are also anti-Republic of Korea, anti-United States, and anti-Japan. They now control the majority of levers of power in South Korea. So today, I'll highlight three areas. One, the efforts to change the constitution of the Republic of Korea and to pull it away from a freedom-based democracy and market economy to one that is socialist-based. Two, suppression of freedom of speech. And three, suppression of freedom of religion. But the Lee Jae-myung administration, the Democratic Party of Korea, which is DPK, and its associated political parties are about to change the constitution. The public is not demanding this change. It's only a small segment of the society, specifically those who are pro-CCP and pro-socialism, who want this. But the details of the changes are not available to the public. All these changes show a move away from freedom-based democracy and market economy to socialism, which is about central planning and central distribution. It's about taking the choices and decision-making away from individuals and concentrating them centrally in the government. It's about eroding individual freedom. That's because the state makes all the decisions, just like in North Korea. Out of all these proposed changes, the DPK made deleting freedom from the Constitution its party platform in 2018. They withdrew their efforts to change the Constitution only after they faced opposition. Then they bided for time. And now they're again trying to change the Constitution to change the fundamental nature of the freedom-based republic, but less obviously this time, by being quiet about the content. They likely have other changes, but one thing is clear. They're trying to change the Constitution quickly. They're trying to pass a law currently to have a referendum to change the Constitution in the upcoming elections, which is a little over a month away. And surprisingly, Chinese citizens who are green card holders, who have lived in South Korea for 3 years, they can vote in the regional elections. Once these Chinese citizens register to vote, they can vote in Korean regional elections even if they live in China. Korean elections, especially since the April 2020 elections, have been mired in election fraud controversies, such as more ballots than registered voters, stacks of pristine and unfolded ballots found in piles in ballot containers, and 3,170 votes in a row going towards one candidate. That's by a ballot counting machine. So the DPK and the Lee Jae-myung administration want to add the referendum to change the constitution to coincide with the June 3rd elections. More than 80% and 90% in some surveys of South Koreans do not like China, especially after they realize that Chinese influence on domestic politics is so prevalent in South Korea. Banners that criticize the Chinese Communist Party or calls for an investigation into election fraud are labeled as hate speech. And afterwards, they get investigated just as they do in the PRC. At an anti-CCP rally in Korea in October 2025, Korean youth tore up a flag of Communist China, and immediately they were investigated by the police. But when an anti-US group tore up a US flag in front of the US embassy in Seoul, nothing happened to them. No investigations. So this is prejudicial. The National Election Commission, or NEC, even tried to push for a law to punish people who raised concerns about the election fraud. This was revealed in late December 2024. On May 14th, 2025, less than 3 weeks away from the presidential elections, the platform X-Korea suspended the account of a presidential candidate, Hwang Yo-an, who has been calling for election integrity. On April 16th, 2026, so earlier this month, Jeon Han-gil, he's a history lecturer and a YouTube political commentator. He was handcuffed and taken in by the police. And the reason was defamation of politicians, which included Lee Jae-myung. But he was not even charged with anything. And the police did not have an arrest warrant. In January 2025, DPK lawmaker Jeon Yong-gi stated publicly that the DPK will absolutely charge or file charges with the police against anyone who posts comments that they don't like on social media. When the DPK files complaints, the police then take action by starting an investigation. What are the topics that the DPK doesn't approve of? Election fraud issues, such as when someone posts 196-year-old voted, and that's based on the National Election Commission data. Or when people say China interfered in the elections. Or when people write North Korea interfered in the elections. This sounds more like North Korea and the PRC, but this is occurring in South Korea. Under the Lee Jae-myung administration, pastors have been jailed. This is even before any trial. Pastor Son Yeon-bo was arrested and jailed in September 2025. Pastor Son, who organized national prayer rallies against the political tyranny of the pro-CCP, pro-communist factions, was jailed for inviting a conservative education superintendent candidate to his church to speak. They called it a violation of the election law. He faced over 20 lawsuits, many of them filed primarily by the controversial and above-the-law National Election Commission. His church was raided. He was released eventually due to international pressure. In another case, Pastor Jeon Kwang-hoon was arrested and jailed earlier this year on January 22nd. He also led prayers and peaceful rallies where people held the ROK and U.S. flags to show support for a strong U.S.-ROK alliance. These are the same tactics that the PRC used against Hong Kong citizens who protest against communism in Hong Kong. Lawfare is used in a different way as well. The DPK recently introduced a bill to suppress freedom of religion. Churches are registered as legal entity in South Korea. Under this proposed bill, the government can revoke the approval that established a legal entity like the church. It also requires the confiscation of church property. Those who want to pass the bill state that these measures apply to churches for interfering in politics. The Korean church strongly opposes this bill, citing that it infringes upon freedom of religion, which is guaranteed by the Constitution. The bill was recently retracted, fortunately, after heavy opposition by Christians. But there's a record of these lawmakers reintroducing the same unconstitutional content in the bills over and over. The Republic of Korea has been seen as a shining example of America's success story. In adopting the American-style, freedom-based political and economic system, South Korea thrived. Unlike North Korea, where people lacked freedom and food, South Koreans enjoyed freedom and prosperity. But that's changing. I just provided some examples of suppression of freedom of speech and freedom of religion. And those in South Korea who are supportive of the communist parties of China and North Korea, and who are anti-United States, anti-Republic of Korea, and anti-Japan, are trying to change the fundamental nature of the Republic of Korea by deleting freedom from the Constitution and adding a socialist agenda into it, which would essentially turn South Korea into a satellite state of Communist China. While the anti-freedom faction has taken control over levers of power, including the government and the major media, there are South Korean patriots who are desperately fighting against this potential outcome. They don't want Korea to become like Venezuela under Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro. They call for CCP out because they don't want to be a vassal state of the PRC. We should listen to them and voice support for freedom. Thank you.
はい、アメリカファーストでございますから、アメリカの国益と関係のないね、辺境の一国である韓国のことなんてね、あまり気にしてこなかったアメリカの議員たちですけど、まさにね、今の韓国の、イ・ジェミョン政府、韓国の問題っていうのは、アメリカの国益につながる重要なね、この分かれ道なんだっていうことを認識し始めたっていうことがね、一番大きな変化じゃないかなと思いますけど、今後のね、東アジアのね、この展開からも目が離せませんけど、かつて国民の力の議員がね、アメリカに訪米した際に、これチャン・ドンヒョク代表じゃないですけど、アメリカの議員たちはイ・ジェミョン大統領候補のことをね、まだ大統領になってなかった頃ですけど、グローバルな政治家とかじゃなくて、グローバルなヴィラン、だからグローバルな悪党ぐらいにね、認識してましたっていうね、ことを国会で言ってましたけど、さすがに大統領になったイ・ジェミョンがね、グローバルヴィランとしてアメリカに認識されることがないようにね、ぜひきちんと政治をしていただきたいなと。ね。ぜひきちんとね、韓国の舵取りをしていただきたいなと思います。はい。